AEW star Lio Rush announces that his contract is set to expire next month and he is going to become a free agent, plus several more contracts to expire in the coming months. Who is going to stay? Who is going to re-sign? All this and more in today's AEW news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today. So we're going to talk about AEW. We're going to talk about, of course, Lio Rush and this just ongoing contractual situation that is happening now in AEW. Since AEW was founded back in 2019 and all of these stars were signed to contracts, we knew 2022 was going to be a big year for the company. Why? Because all of these stars had signed 3-year contracts, and of course contracts expire, and at a time where AEW is signing a lot of talent, we've heard a lot of rumors about them not releasing talent, but just deciding not to extend their contract. That's how they're going to do business in terms of talent coming in and going out of the company. Now, as seen in a Twitter post, AEW wrestler Lio Rush has revealed that his contract with All Elite Wrestling will be expiring on Monday, February 14th, 2022. With it being less than a month away from the contract coming to an end, Rush notes how he will now be accepting booking inquiries. This is what he had to say on social media. He said, quote, "On February 14th, 2022, my contract will expire with AEW and I will become a free agent. For all booking inquiries, please email at leorushnow@gmail.com. Now, Rush, of course, had recently been featured during segments with Team Taz and Dante Martin, while being featured on Dynamite, Rampage, and on Dark and Dark Elevation on YouTube. Now, in addition to performing for AEW, he also appears with other promotions such as GCW, a company that's become more and more popular as they go into the World on GCW event later on this evening. On that night, of course, Rush will be appearing as part of the Brass Ring ladder match against PCO, Tony Deppen, Jordan Oliver, Jimmy Lloyd, and Alex Colon. Now, Rush was recently making headlines when he released several statements surrounding the Big Swole Tony Khan controversy regarding her departure from the company as well. It all began with an episode of Big Swole's The Swole World that aired on the Call-In platform online. During the episode, the former AEW star pointed out the lack of diversity in the top spots within All Elite Wrestling as being one of the leading factors in her departure in 2021. Now, Tony Khan, the AEW president, responded in a single tweet and pointed to how other people of color have succeeded in AEW. He then said, and this is really what got people talking, that he let Swole's contract expire with the company because her wrestling wasn't good enough. Now, this led to several tweets being released by Lio Rush, including statements like, "I'm not cool with any of this SHIT, to be honest, and if nobody says something, then I will, because this is effed up, and now I'm pissed." Now, a few days later, after those tweets, Rush released a follow-up statement regarding the situation. In it, Lio Rush took to a more professional tone and conceded that AEW is making efforts towards diversity. He released a lengthy statement that we've spoken about previously. Rush has previously worked, of course, with Ring of Honor, CZW, and through 2017 to 2020, he worked with WWE. He may be most recognizable as Bobby Lashley's manager during his time on Raw. He's also a former NXT Cruiserweight champion. Now, Rush officially signed with AEW in September of 2021, returning to action for the promotion in November. He had previously appeared for the company in May of 2021 as well as the Joker in the Double or Nothing Casino Battle Royale. So it's an interesting one because it feels like Lio Rush hasn't even been with the company for that long. I mean, I mentioned there, his debut for the company came in May of last year at Double or Nothing. He was the Joker. He appeared in that Battle Royal. He injured his shoulder during it, and that's when it came out afterwards that he said, "I injured my shoulder, I'm retiring." And he said he was going to fulfill his dates with New Japan Pro Wrestling, but he was going to retire. Subsequently, what happens? He comes, once his shoulder's fixed, he's still working for New Japan, but he also works for AEW, and he also works for GCW. So, look, Lio Rush, when it comes to contracts, he's a difficult person to figure out, to be honest with you. I think this is just a case of he took a more professional tone after the Big Swole incident, but personally I see it as either Tony Khan or AEW or Lio Rush himself decided that they don't want to work there anymore, because he's been conspicuous by his absence really when it comes to Dynamite, because he was as a part of the whole Dante Martin Team Taz situation. I mean, Rush was kind of working as Dante Martin's representative, agent, manager, call it what you will. To be honest with you, I never really... that it did nothing for me. And I think this is just a case of, as I mentioned before, AEW, and we'll talk about this because there's some more contracts and people's contracts coming up with AEW. This is just, we're coming to the end of a cycle, I think, when it comes to AEW, and that this initial talent roster is going to be replenished and refreshed. And did I see Lio Rush being a really big player in AEW? Honestly, not really. And I feel that this is probably AEW and Lio Rush and all those involved just going, you know what, it's just it's best to leave here. You know, Lio Rush. I mean, from a Tony Khan perspective as well. If I'm paying someone, they're not employees, but if there's an independent contractor that's working with me, and there's this big public situation, and basically Lio Rush came out and essentially verbally attacked the company and the AEW president. I find it difficult to really come back from that. I do, and he'll be fine because he'll get booked, but you know, it's a strange one with Lio Rush. But I'm sure, as I mentioned, he'll be doing work with GCW. He'll probably do work with Ring of Honor when it starts back up. Wouldn't be shocked to see him in Impact Wrestling at all. He'd be a fine X Division champion. In fact, I expect to see him in Impact, considering his ties to New Japan. He's going to continue to do dates with New Japan, and considering their working relationship with Impact Wrestling, considering they're back on Access TV now, it feels like a given that Lio Rush will end up in Impact Wrestling, and I'm sure he'll do very well in that company. I think he suits there probably better than he did AEW, frankly. So it's surprising in the sense that, I mean, I believe he signed his contract with AEW, as I mentioned, in November, after he made his first appearance in May. So that's why I'm just surprised he had a contract that lasts, November to February is, November, December, January, February, 4 months. It just, maybe I'm looking too much into that, but it just seems a bit odd to me that. Maybe I'm wrong, we'll have to wait and see, but Lio Rush, I don't expect him to stick around, and as I mentioned, it's just the beginning of several contracts expiring, because it looks like as though Lio Rush won't be the only AEW star with an expired contract in the coming months. As I mentioned, Lio Rush, Big Swole are two of the most vocal talents coming out of their contracts expiring, whereas other stars like Brian Cage have been speculated as parting ways with the company, as he hasn't been on AEW television since October 2021, but there's been no official word on that. So let's talk about the contracts, as I mentioned there. It's been speculated that Brian Cage's push was called in AEW following comments made by his wife, former Lucha Underground and Impact Wrestling ring announcer Melissa Santos, regarding the use of Cage in AEW, but that was never confirmed. Now, on his Instagram account, Cage has posted some cryptic messages that have centered around his absence in AEW. He said, quote, "I'm looking for the answer, hashtag who better, hashtag need the machine, hashtag Swolverine, hashtag Mr. GMSI, hashtag where you been." At the same time, of course, while contracts are expiring, AEW continues to gain new stars and bringing new talent to the company, including the likes of former NXT superstars such as Kyle O'Reilly, Jake Atlas, and apparently Marina Shafir. Now, as I mentioned, when it comes to these contracts and this contractual situation, it is curious. As you can see on the screen right there, Peter Avalon and Joey Janela have also been involved in the discussions about contracts that are expiring with the company. On January 18th, AEW star Pretty Peter Avalon tweeted that he's taking bookings for all independent dates and appearances, and his career status is hashtag LFG, or Let's Effing Go. Now, a close friend of Avalon and AEW star in her own right, Leva Bates, recently provided an update on the AEW star following speculation that his contract with the company was coming to an end. We spoke about this on the channel. When fans asked Bates later in the day if this meant that Avalon was finished with AEW, she wrote back, quote, "No, he's still there, just adding indie dates." But despite this update, a conflicting report from PW Insider has emerged stating that Peter Avalon actually did have his deal with AEW expire. He was one of several stars that will be seeing their deals expire in the coming months, as noted in what we just spoke about earlier. Now, it's yet to be confirmed if there are still opportunities for Avalon to work with AEW on a per-performance basis or per-appearance basis, similar to how some talent on AEW Dark is booked. Other AEW stars that have contracts expiring soon include 3 names in particular, such as Marko Stunt, Joey Janela, and the aforementioned Brian Cage. Now, when it comes to Marko Stunt, he's been off of AEW television since September of 2021 and was quietly dropped from the Jurassic Express stable in recent weeks. Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus became AEW AEW Tag Team Champions for the first time on the TBS premiere of Dynamite and are now recognized by their individual names. Janela was an AEW original and most recently wrestled for AEW against Eddie Kingston for an episode of Dark filmed in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was teamed up with Sonny Kiss for a large majority of his run with the company and also had some standout Extreme spots in some of AEW's first televised matches. As mentioned, when it comes to Brian Cage, he hasn't been on AEW television since October, despite reportedly being backstage regularly during the shows. Now, obviously, it's always possible that these individuals sign a new deal with the company before their contracts officially expire. So the Marko Stunt one, I've seen a lot of people talking about that. Where is Marko Stunt? What's going on with Marko Stunt? From what I gather and from what it's been said online, he's been auditioning for The Voice. He sent a load of stuff off to The Voice. He fancies himself to be a bit of a singer-songwriter. He even performed a song during one of Britt Baker's The Waiting Room, Doctor's Waiting Room segments on AEW Dark. I think, some people were upset that Marko Stunt wasn't involved in the Jurassic Express winning the AEW Tag Team Championships, and he's essentially been replaced by Christian Cage. But I think this is just a case of AEW evolving. I really do. And I'm sure the AEW haters and the WWE stans will say, well, you get on WWE for when they let talents go, but you're not getting on AEW when they're letting talents go. And there is a difference here. You're looking at things without actually having any form of context to it. WWE, over the course of the last 2 years, has actively signed people to 5-year contracts or 3-year contracts, or signed people 6 months later and released them from that contract. Imagine you're someone like the Good Brothers. You signed a 5-year contract in 2019. You thought, I have a guaranteed contract for 5 years. I'm going to make more money than I've ever made in my life. And then 6-9 months later, you're released and you're worried about money and you're worried about finding a new job. Same with a lot of people in NXT. Whether it's, someone like Taya Valkyrie. Taya Valkyrie signed with WWE in, January, and she was gone before the year was out. That's unbelievable. It's incredible. AEW, on the other hand, signed people in 2019, and they've let the entirety of their contract pay out. They've paid them the entirety of their deal, and they're just choosing not to re-sign them. They're trying to make contracts essentially mean something again. Nowadays, contracts in wrestling and in football and in everything don't mean anything. Companies can just decide to rip them up whenever they want. But I guess AEW is trying to make them mean something, apart from people that have requested their release or people that have had disciplinary issues. AEW hasn't really released anyone. You can count them on one hand, the people they've decided to let go. So otherwise, they're just, contracts are coming to an end, and that's kind of the situation. And frankly, we always like to say about how many people AEW has on the roster, and it is a problem. This is essentially, as I mentioned, AEW refreshing the roster. They're bringing new talent in, and talent that they're not using, or talent that they have no use for anymore. They're letting the contracts expire, and that's it. And these people that are going, whether it's Brian Cage will get booked. I wouldn't be shocked if he goes back to Impact, frankly. Peter Avalon will do very well in the independent scene. Joey Janela works a lot with GCW. They're growing anyway, so I'm sure he'll be fine, plus the indie dates. These people aren't coming out of the company worse off than they were coming in, and I think that's worth pointing out as well. So it's part of the refresh. It's part of the cycle, especially in a company as well where such emphasis is placed on wins and losses. Wins and losses matter. I compared it to the UFC previously. What I compared it to is that in the UFC, and I know pro wrestling, it's a work, wins, it's not real, but in the UFC, if you lose all of these fights over and over and over and over, eventually they'll cut your contract because there's not a lot of value in you anymore to sell fights because everyone knows you're going to lose. And it's the case with some of these stars. These are underneath stars. Brian Cage is the curious one, and I think that might be slightly political about what his wife said about AEW and what his wife said about Tony Khan and all that kind of stuff. But on the flip side of things, you can't say that. If Tony Khan, it's a bit like the Leo Rush thing. If Leo Rush said that stuff, and I know he apologized and said that he'd spoken to Tony Khan, etc., but if Tony Khan doesn't act or anything like that, what kind of leader does he look like? You've got to have some kind of authority over your company and over your talent roster. So, the Brian Cage one is curious, but I think he'll probably, as I mentioned, go back to Impact. I don't see him going to WWE, even though you look at someone like Brian Cage, of course, they would absolutely, the guy's everything Vince McMahon looks for, but maybe he's got too much of the look that they're looking for, if you know what I mean. But I think this is just the next evolution of AEW's roster. Plus, I think also they're freeing up spots for a lot more names that are going to come in this year. We have names like Keith Lee, Killer Cross, even Bray Wyatt. Who knows what's going to happen with Braun Strowman? Plus, all of the female names that have been released as well by WWE. A lot of those are going to come into AEW. I have no doubt about it. So I think they're freeing up for that as well. So it's going to be a busy year for AEW. And again, I think it's just the next step in their evolution, frankly. But look, guys, let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news. I'll be sure to respond to some of your comments. Smash a like on the like button and be sure to subscribe. Bottom right-hand corner as well. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.